Today we're diving into some stuff that might seem a bit dry at first glance, but trust me, there's some really interesting stuff here.
Absolutely.
We're talking about Leviticus, chapter 1, all about burnt offerings. And, our goal here is to go beyond just like the mechanics of it, the what, and really try to get to the why. What was the significance of these rituals to the people who practice them? I think you're going to be surprised by some of the details we find in here.
Yeah, when you start to really dig into these, seemingly simple rules, you realize it's a highly structured and intentional practice, right?
Sure.
It wasn't just random. There was a clear order and a purpose behind each step.
So let's unpack the basics here. The first instruction we get is that, offerings to the Lord should be animals from your herd, like cattle or your flock, sheep or goats.
Right, yeah. And if it's a burnt offering from the herd, the text specifically says it needs to be a male without defect, which is this idea of offering something unblemished, something perfect, is a recurring theme throughout these instructions.
Okay, interesting.
And the animal is, it's presented at the entrance to the tent of meeting.
Right.
Which, the tent of meeting was this central sanctuary, the designated space for encountering the divine.
So presenting it there would have been?
It makes the presentation, particularly significant.
Yeah, okay.
And then we have this really powerful image where the person making the offering lays their hand on the animal's head.
Right.
And we're told this act is what makes the offering acceptable and provides atonement.
Wow, that's a pretty heavy gesture.
It is. Scholars believe that the laying of hands probably symbolized some kind of transfer, perhaps of sin or impurity, onto the animal.
Like a shifting of the burden.
Exactly, yeah. So the animal then serves as a substitute.
Okay, wow.
And following this, the animal is slaughtered before the Lord. And then the priests, Aaron's sons, they step in. And, the concept of atonement here signifies a way of making amends, right?
Yeah.
Seeking reconciliation with the divine. The offering was a way to purify yourself or even the whole community.
Okay, so that's kind of the big picture purpose here.
Yeah, exactly.
So then the priests take the blood and splash it against the altar. After that, the animal is skinned and cut into pieces. It's interesting how specific these instructions get.
Yeah, it really highlights the importance of precision in these rituals. The priests then, they arrange fire and wood on the altar and carefully place the prepared animal, including the head and the fat, on top. And one interesting detail here is that the internal organs and legs are washed before being placed on the fire.
Okay, now that's a curious detail. What do you think is the reasoning behind that?
That's a great question. It's, scholars have different theories, but it could symbolize purification, both internal and external, before the offering is made complete.
Makes you think, huh?
Yeah. And then the final result of this whole process is described as a burnt offering, a food offering, an aroma pleasing to the Lord.
That's quite a description.
It is. And this idea of a pleasing aroma, it's actually pretty common in ancient Near Eastern religions, where offerings were sometimes seen as providing sustenance or appeasement to the deity.
So it's not just about the destruction of the offering, there's more to it.
Exactly, yeah. It's about creating a connection, right? A relationship.
Interesting.
So when we move on to offerings from the flock, sheep or goats, we see a lot of similarities.
Okay.
Again, a male without defect is required, but the slaughter happens on the north side of the altar this time. But the priests still handle the blood. The animal is prepared in much the same way. The washing of the internal organs and legs is repeated, and we still have that same description at the end. A burnt offering, a food offering, an aroma pleasing to the Lord.
So even though the animal is different, the language really underscores that it's fundamentally the same purpose.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Now, the offering of birds, like doves or young pigeons, this is where things get a little different.
Yeah. And this, some scholars believe it might reflect different means.
Right.
Like maybe not everyone could afford a bull or a sheep, or maybe it was just a specific type of offering for a particular purpose.
Okay, so maybe a little more accessible to different people?
Possibly, yeah. So the priest brings the bird to the altar, wrings off its head, burns it, and drains the blood on the side of the altar. And there's a specific step here where they remove the crop and feathers.
Oh, right.
Which are then discarded east of the altar with the ashes. And instead of being fully cut up, the bird is just torn open by the wings before being burned.
Interesting.
And even here, we still get that same phrase: a burnt offering, a food offering, an aroma pleasing to the Lord.
So even with this humbler offering, it's still described in this really powerful way, which I guess highlights that it's the intent and the perceived outcome that really matters.
Exactly, yeah. The underlying principle is consistent, no matter what animal is being offered.
Okay, so thinking about all these recurring elements, the unblemished male, the role of the priest, the splashing of the blood, the pleasing aroma, the washing, and the different animals that could be used, what stands out to you as particularly significant?
Well, I think the emphasis on the animal being without defect is really striking, you know? And in a society where resources might have been limited, it makes you wonder what kind of practical challenges that might have presented.
That's a great point, yeah.
Like, finding an animal that met all the requirements couldn't have always been easy.
Right.
But it really emphasizes this idea of offering the very best to the divine, right? A representation of purity and dedication.
Yeah.
And the priests, they act as these mediators, highlighting the structured relationship between the people and God.
Right.
And the blood, which likely symbolized life force, is offered back to the divine. And, having these different animals suggests that perhaps there was a way for people of different economic levels to participate in these rituals.
Yeah, okay.
So, we see all this focus on ritual precision. It makes you wonder, could this be a way to try to control or understand the divine, or maybe something else entirely?
That's a fascinating question to ponder.
Yeah.
So, we have this meticulously detailed process, specific roles for everyone involved, and the goal of pleasing the Lord and achieving atonement. Considering the level of detail we see in these ancient instructions, what do you think it tells us about the values and priorities of the society that practiced these rituals?
Right. The sheer level of detail suggests a culture that placed a really high value on order, on precision, and on a very specific way of engaging with the divine.
Right.
It speaks to this desire for clarity, for protocol, in seeking favor or reconciliation.
Yeah.
And, on a broader level, it maybe points to this fundamental human need to find tangible ways to express devotion, seek forgiveness, or connect with something beyond ourselves.
Right. Even if the specific ways we do that change over time.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's a powerful thought.
Yeah.
So considering everything we've explored today, what do you think these ancient rituals tell you about the enduring human need for structure and symbolism in our attempts to connect with something greater than ourselves? It's something to really think about. Thanks for diving deep with us.
Thanks for having me.
And we'll see you next time.